so we're back from our flight test, and the Grinderino did a pretty amazing job, guys. Now, I've flown a few 3.5-inch drones, as you can see right here, and this is my favorite segment in the FPV hobby, and that's because of this drone's versatility. Now, these things are very light, quiet, and powerful, and can even carry an action camera. These things are just amazing, and the Grinderino is no different. The biggest difference in this one here is that we have an HDZero digital transmission system, and this is my first actual freestyle drone with the HDZero system in it. So if you're looking to build your own Grinderino, I've done a full video on the frame and how to build your own, especially if you're trying to put the HDZero system in your drone as well. I'll leave this video linked above and below so you can take a look at it. Now let's talk about the flight characteristics of this drone. Now this is flashed with Betaflight 4.4 and a preset tune on here. And once I took off, guys, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was and how smooth it was to fly. I don't know if that's to do with these new motors on here or this stack, this SpeedyBee mini stack, F405 stack on here. It's a good quality or trait of a 3.5-inch drone. Now the flight characteristics, this thing flew very well, straight like an arrow. Now today I flew with winds around 5 to 10 miles an hour, and this thing here was not phased. Now typically 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour isn't gonna phase a 3.5-inch freestyle drone, and the Grinderino was no different. This thing was not influenced by the wind or the weather. And whenever I flew, this thing tracked straight, guys. Never once was it influenced by the wind. Even when doing some loops or just some high dives and I just released the control, this thing would just go straight down the last place that I set it. And that's a really good sign of a good frame, as well as a good flight controller and gyro on this flight controller here. So props to SpeedyBee for making this pretty decent flight controller, guys. Now, sometimes I did wish I had a little bit more power. These are 1404 motors, and I initially wanted to go with the 1604 to get some more punch out of that, but these were adequate. And honestly, guys, these other 3.5-inch drones, they're all equipped with 1404 motors, so they all behave the same. But you know, I just wanted a little bit more punch. And maybe next time, or if you have the option to put maybe a little bit larger motors on here, that might benefit you, but that might be at the detriment of some battery life. And we'll talk about the battery life of this drone a little bit later. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that this has HDZero on here. This is my first freestyle drone with HDZero, and this thing behaved pretty well. And this was a good match for this drone. We had clear image coming from our RunCam camera here, and it was pretty clear in my goggles. Now I was using the HDZero goggles on here. We do have the Whoop Light VTX in here, and that was a perfect match, guys. Now, as far as range on this, range was pretty good and pretty typical of my other HDZero VTX and drones. We have this small ORT antenna on here, and they did a pretty good job, no issues, but we do have the same penetration issues with HDZero. And typically with freestyle drones, you're ducking behind buildings or behind trees. In my case, we have trees everywhere around. Sometimes you want to go behind a tree or power loop a tree, and penetration was the biggest concern of mine. Now that's not the most confidence inspiring thing when you have a freestyle drone, but that's normal of most or any HDZero system. Now that can be combated or fixed with a higher output VTX. Hopefully HDZero can come up with a solution that's a little bit smaller but has a little bit more output than these Whoop VTX, which are limited to around 200 milliwatts. Now let's talk about the battery life on the Grinderino. As I said before, I have the 1404 motors on here. This is a 4S build, so I did use a few 4S batteries, and they did a pretty good job. Now my main battery here was this 850 here, and it's a pretty decent, probably the perfect battery for this Grinderino here. Not only does it give me the 4 cells, it's also lightweight and it has a decent capacity. Now talking about the weight, this thing here is the ideal battery for this weight. And talking about the weight, let's just weigh this right now and see how much this thing weighs here. So here you go, 179 grams, not the lightest of the bunch, but still pretty light, guys, honestly. And then here with the battery on here, put that on, 248 grams, so sub 250. So this is pretty much the largest battery you can use on here. Now obviously I use some other batteries. Here's a 650 on here, and that gives me a little bit over 250. That's 259. And here's a larger 850, and that gives me around 282 grams, guys. Now, since we're talking about weight here in the main process here, now I did fly this with and without an action cam. So if you are gonna fly this sub 250, unfortunately, you're not gonna have the ability to carry an action cam. I do have a 3D printed mount here for my RunCam Thumb Pro Wide, or W, and that did a really amazing job. You probably saw it in the introductory video of this drone here. Now I bring this up just to say that if you are gonna run an action cam, there's a high chance you are gonna go over the 250-gram threshold. Now on that same topic of batteries here, battery life was pretty good on the Grinderino. These are a little bit smaller motors, and I was averaging between 4.5 to over 5 minutes of flight time, which is pretty good of any freestyle drones. Typically a 5-inch freestyle drone, you average around 4 minutes, and I was averaging between 4.5 to 5 minutes. Now that's with mixed flying. If you were heavy on the throttle, probably less than that, maybe just 4 minutes even. And if you cruise a little bit more, you probably get around 5.5 to maybe even 6 minutes of flight time. Lastly, let's talk about the durability of the Grinderino. Now, I had one crash throughout my testing of this drone, and that was actually on the first flight while I was testing on this, and I just did a maneuver and crashed right into the ground. Now, the Grinderino held up pretty well, actually. No broken arms or anything, just some bent propellers. Now I have the green ones on here opposed to the purple ones that I started off with. Pretty strong. I don't suspect this drone to have any weak points in here. This thing is a pretty basic design. And with that said, during my time of testing this drone, I had to do a bunch of just testing and repairs, and this thing was easy to repair, guys. So if you do happen to break an arm, it's just one screw on here, and that's it, guys. So having said all that, what do I think about the Grinderino? Well, I do think it was a smart move by Bot Grinder and Oh My God to create a smaller version of the Demibot. As I said before, the 3.5-inch drone segment to me is the most versatile in the FPV community. And this is no exception, guys. It's a very capable drone. It's quiet, it's powerful. It can carry an action camera and can do numerous things, guys. You can do freestyle with this. I have Express LRS on here, and the tune and the frame design is so good on here. I was doing also some cinematic flying with this drone as well. So this thing is very, very capable. And that's pretty good because this thing can fly anywhere without garnering the attention of the public and the soon-to-be FAA. This thing here weighs under 250 grams. So if you're looking for a drone to not have remote ID or to have maybe HDZero, this might be the one for you. It checks off all those boxes, guys. Having said that, I'll leave links to all these products down below, including the frame and all the electronics down below in the description. Now, if you're interested in other 3.5-inch drones, I have a slew of them right here, including this special one here that's being powered by 18650 batteries. I've done a full review on these and I'll leave it linked right here. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.